My girlfriend said, "You're boring and predictable." I replied, "Then this will surprise you," packed quietly, disappeared from her life, and I smiled when her exciting choice destroyed everything she mocked. Hey Reddit. I was 25, fresh out of a dead-end job in tech support that had sucked the life out of me for 3 long years. Picture this. Endless calls from frustrated customers yelling about their Wi-Fi woes, while I sat in a cubicle farm under flickering fluorescent lights, dreaming of something more. I'd finally quit, burning through my meager savings to chase vague ambitions, maybe freelance coding or starting a blog. But for now, I was holed up in a cramped apartment in the heart of the city, a shoebox with peeling paint and a view of a brick wall. The rent was sky high, the neighbors loud, and my days blurred into a monotonous grind of job applications, cheap takeout, and scrolling through social media feeds that made everyone else's lives look infinitely more exciting. I'd always played it safe, steady routine, no drama, just grinding through life like a hamster on a wheel. My parents had instilled that in me. Work hard, save up, avoid risks. It kept me afloat, but lately, it felt like a cage. Enter my girlfriend, Alex. Let's call her that for the story, though her real name was something fiercer, like a storm you couldn't predict. She was the opposite, wild, impulsive, always chasing thrills like a moth to a flame. We met 2 years ago at a dive bar downtown, the kind with sticky floors and neon signs. I'd gone out with coworkers to blow off steam after a particularly brutal shift. She was there, laughing loudly at the bar, downing shots and flirting with the bartender. Our eyes locked, and before I knew it, we were talking, her energy infectious, pulling me out of my shell. I thought her wildness balanced my calm, like yin and yang. She made me feel alive, daring me to try new things, spontaneous road trips, late-night adventures in the city, even skinny dipping in a forbidden lake once. But lately, things felt off. Alex had grown restless, her complaints sharper. "You're too predictable, too boring," she'd snap during our quiet dinners, pushing away her half-eaten pasta. I'd brush it off, thinking love would smooth it out. Maybe a romantic getaway or a surprise date. Deep down, though, I knew the cracks were widening. She craved excitement, and I was just there. That night, as we argued over takeout in our cluttered living room, I had no idea it would flip everything. Little did I know, the thrill she sought was about to drag us both into chaos. "You're boring and predictable," she spat, her eyes flashing with that familiar fire as she slammed the door behind her, leaving me alone in our dimly lit living room with my heart pounding like a drum. I stared at the empty space where she'd stood, realizing this wasn't just another fight. It was the moment everything I'd built could crumble, and if I didn't act, I'd lose not just her, but my own sense of self-worth forever. The words echoed in my head, sharper than any knife, cutting through the haze of our argument. We'd been circling this abyss for weeks. Her late nights out, the cryptic texts, the way she'd roll her eyes at my attempts to plan our future. Boring and predictable. Was that really me? The guy who'd quit his soul-crushing job to chase dreams. The one who'd followed her on wild escapades without question? But deep down, I knew she was right. I'd let her lead, her impulsiveness dictating our path, while I trailed behind like a shadow, afraid to rock the boat. Now, the boat was sinking, and I was drowning in regret. What if this was it? What if she walked out for good, leaving me with nothing but empty nights and a hollow apartment that screamed of failed promises? Panic surged through me, my palms sweaty as I paced the room, the city lights flickering outside like mocking stars. I could hear her footsteps fading down the hallway, the door to our shared life creaking shut. Emotional ruin stared me in the face, nights replaying our memories, wondering where I'd gone wrong, spiraling into self-doubt that could swallow me whole. But then, something shifted. A spark ignited in my chest, fueled by the anger and fear. No more playing it safe. No more letting her, or anyone, dictate my worth. I grabbed my jacket, flung open the door, and stepped into the hallway, determination hardening my resolve. This time, I was taking control. I'd chase her down, confront the truth, and reclaim what was mine, starting with my own damn life. The crisis was here, and I wasn't backing down. What happened next? That was up to me now. After she stormed out, I sat there for hours, the clock ticking like a bomb in the silence of our dimly lit living room. The air still smelled of her perfume, a mix of jasmine and rebellion, clinging to the couch where we'd fought. I replayed every argument in my mind, each one a fresh wound. She'd mocked my stability, calling it a cage that suffocated her wild spirit. "You're like a rock in quicksand," she'd sneered during our last blowout, her voice dripping with frustration. "Live a little," she'd say, chasing adrenaline rushes like skydiving from planes or spontaneous road trips to nowhere, leaving me breathless and envious. I was the anchor, the one who paid the bills, planned our mundane future, and held us steady while she drifted. But that night, doubt gnawed at me like a relentless tide. Was I really the problem? Had my boring predictability driven her away? The thought twisted in my gut, mixing fear with a flicker of defiance. What if I was the one holding us back? What if letting go meant freedom for both of us? Then, something snapped inside me, a dam breaking under the pressure. I couldn't just sit there, waiting for her to return or not. Rising stakes loomed. If I didn't act, I'd spiral into emotional ruin, questioning every choice I'd ever made. I grabbed a suitcase from the closet, the zipper's rasp echoing my racing heart. Packed my essentials quietly, clothes, laptop, a few photos, leaving her stuff untouched, no note, no goodbye. As I slipped out into the cool night air, the city's hum swallowing my footsteps, I whispered to myself, "Then this will surprise you." Disappearing felt liberating, like shedding a skin I'd outgrown, a rush of power surging through me. I cut off all contact, blocked her number, deleted our shared apps, and drove to a new city hours away, a fresh start in a nondescript motel. No drama, just gone. But deep down, a twist brewed. Would this bold move win her back, or unravel everything I'd ever known? The tension coiled tighter, leaving me wondering if my plan would ignite a spark or burn us both. Weeks later, as I settled into my new life in a quiet coastal town, the distance felt like armor. I'd landed a freelance gig coding for a startup, rented a modest apartment overlooking the sea, and started therapy to unpack the baggage I'd carried. But curiosity, and maybe a touch of vindication, kept me tethered to the past. Through mutual friends who texted cautiously, I pieced together Alex's downward spiral. She dove headfirst into her thrills, as if my absence had unleashed a floodgate. First, she hooked up with a guy she met at a club, some tattooed adrenaline junkie who promised adventures but left her ghosted after a weekend fling. Then, she quit her graphic design job impulsively, lured by a spiritual retreat in the mountains that turned out to be a scam, overpriced seminars peddling pseudoscience, leaving her stranded and broke. The stories trickled in, each one a punch to the gut. She blew through our joint savings on impulsive buys. A vintage motorcycle she couldn't ride, designer clothes that piled up unworn, and a series of life-changing workshops that drained her accounts. Friends described her as frantic, her eyes wild with the same fire that once drew me in, but now it was desperation. "She's chasing shadows," one mutual acquaintance messaged me. "Calls me at 3 a.m., rambling about how she needs you back." I watched from afar, not gloating, but seeing how her mockery of my predictability was biting back. Her exciting life? It was a house of cards, collapsing under its own weight. Debt piling up, relationships crumbling, the thrill turning to isolation. She called my old number repeatedly, desperate voicemails pleading for a second chance, but I stayed silent, my phone a silent sentinel. The power had shifted irreversibly. I was free, rebuilding a life on my terms, while she grappled with the chaos she'd courted. Would this twist bring her to her knees, or force her to confront the void she'd created? The suspense hung heavy, making me wonder if true freedom came at a cost we both had to pay. Then came the real surprise, the climax that shattered the illusion of her thrilling life. Alex's exciting choice, a reckless fling with someone dangerous, a charismatic but volatile artist from an underground scene, led to disaster. He wasn't just a bad influence. He dragged her into a web of petty theft and unpaid debts, using her impulsiveness against her. She spiraled deeper, maxing out credit cards on futile attempts to impress him, only to be abandoned when the thrill wore off. The consequences hit hard. Eviction notices piled up, her apartment lost to foreclosure, and she ended up crashing with friends who were growing weary of her chaos. Begging for help became her new reality. Late-night calls to old acquaintances, scraping by on odd jobs that barely covered rent. Everything she'd dismissed, stability, planning, reliability, was what she needed now, a bitter pill that forced her to confront the void her choices had created. It wasn't about punishment. It was a human wake-up call, a cautionary tale of how chasing highs without grounding could lead to ruin. I watched from afar, not with malice, but with a quiet relief that bordered on pity. I'd escaped the cycle, rebuilding my life in solitude that felt empowering rather than lonely. Her world, once so alluring and intoxicating, had crumbled under the weight of its own instability. In the end, I realized predictability wasn't boring. It was armor, a shield against the storms she'd courted. And disappearing? It was the most unpredictable thing I'd ever done, a bold reclamation of control that saved me from the same fate. As I stood on my new balcony, gazing at the horizon, I felt a satisfying closure, not victory, but wisdom. Thrills without balance were just illusions, and true freedom came from knowing when to hold steady.